He got upgraded.
He sure did. Okay, so I will read this to you.
Okay.
So here's my question. Do you want to read the whole thing first and then Braille? Or as you go, do you want to kind of Braille some notes and then we'll just go back and edit it? Which would you prefer?
You can read it,
I'm scooting the table up a little bit.
we may end up reading it twice because I may, like while you're reading it, I'll think, but maybe, when I start brailing, I'll be like, hey, read this part again.
I can do that.
Okay, awesome.
Works for you?
So, yeah.
All right, sweet.
I'm going to eat my apple.
I am okay with that. Okay.
What's this?
All right, just my phone. Leave it there. All right. Project Bug. It's by Sophia Noble, and it's illustrated by Stacy Schuett. All right. As Mr. Winkle began the day's science lesson, Kyle turned to look at Kara sitting in the next row. He knew exactly what his twin sister was thinking. This year's 5th grade science excursion was going to be one awesome day out. Mr. Winkle's science excursions were legendary. He loved teaching science, and animals were his specialty. Each year, he raised extra funds from local businesses for a special field trip to study some part of the animal kingdom. One year's trip had been to a salmon hatchery on the Talladega River. Every student had come home wanting to incubate salmon eggs.
Ew.
I know, every student, that is, except the one who fell into the spawning tank.
Ah.
Gross.
Ow.
Last year, Mr. Winkle's class had trekked all the way up Looper Canyon to see nesting egrets and herons.
Ew. I hate animals except for, puppies.
Oh,
That's it.
gosh. Some kids from that trip were still carrying around binoculars. A few unlucky ones sported awkward, uneven haircuts for several months afterwards. They had learned the hard way that rubbing pine sap in each other's hair was not such a good idea. So there's a picture here.
Yeah.
How many kiddos do you see there?
1, 2, 4?
Yep.
Okay.
Alrighty. But there's not a caption, so we don't know if these are any of the characters or not. I assume they are. What do you think?
Probably.
Probably. This year's science excursion promised to top them all. The class was going to visit the tidal mudflats
Ew.
along Boggy Bay and then collect specimens during a science cruise on a bay conservation boat. As Kyle thought about the possibilities of the trip, he wondered, what could possibly go wrong this year? The picture of a crab's claw snapping shut on someone's finger flashed into his mind. Did you know that baby oysters don't have a shell?
Oh.
Asked Mr. Winkle as Kyle's attention returned to class. If you saw newly hatched oysters, you probably wouldn't know what you were looking at. They have a larval stage. Ew! Ha! The class responded. Mr. Winkle continued. Oyster larvae are like tiny, soft bugs drifting in the water. They're too small to see well without a microscope. After maturing a little, the larvae undergo a radical change and grow a shell. Mr. Winkle was big on radical changes.
How do they grow a shell?
I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. I don't know.
I hope.
Mr. Winkle was big on radical changes. He was always changing from one topic to another without fully explaining the connection between the two. Speaking of metamorphosis, Mr. Winkle said, I've ordered a butterfly farm for the class. Metamorphosis is one of the most extreme changes you'll ever see in an animal. And we're going to watch it happen to butterflies even before we go to see the oysters.
We did that in kindergarten.
Butterflies, thought Kyle. Why couldn't we get stag beetles? Now that's a cool insect. When the twins got home from soccer practice that evening, their dad was watching the news on television. The volume was turned up, and Mr. Kalinkovich had a strange, troubled look on his face. The news anchor was just finishing a report. The enormous swarm of grasshoppers has totally decimated a large swath of farmland across the southern Minnesota prairie. Hey, Dad, what's going on? Asked Kyle. Grasshoppers have run amok in southern Minnesota, said Mr. Kalinkovich. They're eating everything in sight. Isn't our sister city Harding in southern Minnesota? Asked Kyle. I think so, said Mr. Kalinkovich, but I don't know whether it's been hit by the grasshoppers. I'm sure Mr. Winkle will know, said Kara. If it has to do with bugs, he's the one to ask. There's a picture there on the left side.
Yeah, they're all watching the news.
Yep, they're watching the news. Perfect. When Kyle and Kara walked into Mr. Winkle's classroom the next day, a copy of a local newspaper article was taped to the board.
Yep.
Hoppers wreak havoc on Harding, shouted the headline. Kyle went over to read the story. Okay, I want you to look at this real quick. Do you see how it's a different color here?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is like the newspaper. This is what was tacked onto the board.
How am I going to know that in Braille?
Well, we'll talk about that when we get to it. Okay. Hoppers wreak havoc on Harding. On the heels of recent unseasonable weather, a huge swarm of grasshoppers descended yesterday on the defenseless fields of Harding, Minnesota. In just 6 hours, the mass of plant-munching insects devoured 3/4 of the acre's prized popcorn crop. Harding Mayor Millie Moody declared a local emergency. We're asking people to keep their children and pets inside until these nasty bugs beat it, said Mayor
ouch.
Moody. I know. Kyle's reading was interrupted by Mr. Winkle. Please sit down, everyone, Mr. Winkle said. I suppose most of you have heard about the events in our sister city, Harding. I'd like us to do our part to help out. How about sending a care package to the Harding Disaster Relief Agency? Good idea, Mr. Winkle, said Devin, Kyle's best friend. We could announce that we're collecting unpopped popcorn and put boxes in the halls for donations. That sounded like a good idea to Kyle. He was sure they had extra boxes of popcorn at home for the cause. But would a few boxes of butter-flavored microwavable popcorn be enough to help Harding's citizens rebound? Without thinking, Kyle heard himself say, "What about sending money? We could use the Science Excursion Fund." The words popped right out of him. Immediately, Kyle felt numb. He could hardly believe he'd just suggested giving up the field trip he'd been looking forward to for so long. He quickly looked over at Kara. She was giving him a thumbs up. So was Devin. Not everyone looked so convinced, but most seemed to be nodding in agreement. My goodness, said Mr. Winkle, a little stunned. That's certainly a noble idea, Kyle. But how does everyone else feel about this? Please raise your hands if you think we should donate our trip fund to the folks in Harding. Mr. Winkle didn't need to count hands. It was clear the class wanted to help. Okay then, said Mr. Winkle, we'll send the money to Harding along with the donations we collect. However, I don't want to abandon our study of metamorphosis, so we will just have to delve more deeply into our butterfly farm. At least there's that, thought Kyle. Here's another picture.
Butterflies.
So what are most of the kids doing?
Raising their hands.
Can you guess which one might be Devin?
Maybe it's that one.
Maybe. I'm thinking it might be this one who's not raising his hand, because they were just talked about how he said it and then he was like, oh no, what do I do?
Yeah.
So maybe it could be him?
I'm trying to find the one that, like, oh, never mind. I was going to say I'm trying to find the one that, like, the girl that looks like him, because he said that he had a twin sister.
Oh, yeah. What about Mr. Winkle? Can you tell which one's Mr. Winkle?
Definitely not.
Definitely. Good job. When Kyle and Kara got to school the following day, they noticed a large wooden crate sitting outside the door of Mr. Winkle's classroom. Kara poked her head into the room. Is this the butterfly farm? She asked. I thought it'd be much smaller. Mr. Winkle looked up from his copy of Insects Illustrated. They sent a beehive kit by mistake, he said. Maybe I checked the B for beehive instead of the B for butterfly on the online order form. That's S for silly, thought Kyle. Just then a delivery person staggered down the hall, struggling under another box. Delivery for Mr. Winkle, he said, setting the box down on the teacher's desk. Kyle really wanted to know what was in that box, but before he could ask, he and Kara had to rush off to Spanish class. All class long, Kyle's thoughts kept returning to the box. It's way too soon for Mr. Winkle to have ordered a replacement butterfly form, so what could be in that second box? There were only more questions. Ooh, maybe. There were only more questions when Kyle and his sister returned to Mr. Winkle's classroom. Both the beehive crate and the mystery box remained unopened, and more packages had joined them. Lots more. In fact,
I think I'm right.
Every corner of the classroom seemed to be covered with packages. Kyle and Kara struggled to make their way past the boxes and shipping tubes that cluttered the floor and tables. They'd just gotten to their seats when another delivery person entered the room. Delivery for Mr. Winkle, she called. That's me, Mr. Winkle replied without enthusiasm. He shifted several open boxes on his desk, pointed to a spot for the new one, and signed the receipt, and then took a pair of scissors out of his top drawer. Mr. Winkle started digging through the newest box, looking a bit like a dog digging in a garden. Finally, he uncovered the buried prize, a brightly colored box. Ha ha, class, he chuckled, holding it up in the air. Can anyone And guess what I've got here? When no one responded, Mr. Winkle provided the answer. It's a stink bug kit, he said.
Oh, my gosh.
As you can see, we've been shipped a few different science kits by mistake. We now have a beehive kit, a butterfly farm, a cricket kit, an earthworm farm, a spittlebug set, a walking stick insect house, an ant colony, a stink bug kit, and everyone's favorite, a mosquito hatchery.
Oh, gosh, no.
The students were astounded, but soon they began to ask questions. Does a spittlebug really spit? Adil asked. Is squashing a stink bug a bad idea? Shauna wondered.
Yeah.
Hey, what's in that box? Louisa asked, pointing to an unopened package. Katie did, said Marissa, reading the label. No, I didn't, said Katie. Kyle and Kara, as usual, had the same idea at the same time. In unison, they asked, can we keep them all? Mr. Winkle laughed. I ordered a butterfly farm, not an insect menagerie. We'll have to return the kits we didn't order. A collective "Aw" crossed the classroom. Can't we keep just a few?
Oh, why don't they all just take one home?
Oh, I don't know. Can't we keep just a few? Devin pleaded. Mr. Winkle scratched his beard thoughtfully. I suppose we could squeeze a few dollars out of my supply budget. And so the decision was made to keep 3 insect kits, in addition to the butterfly farm. Before a vote was taken, Kyle imagined himself hiding a stink bug inside Devin's desk. Then he pictured the ant farm with the ants digging long, curving tunnels next to the glass. When Mr. Winkle counted the votes, the crickets, ants, and bees tied for first place. The other insects had only gotten a vote or 2 each, except for mosquitoes, which got none. The top 3 had obviously won. So Mr. Winkle said those were the ones they'd keep. Oh, here's a picture, sorry.
Okay.
So you see there's like the cardboard box, and these are all the different kits. All right. Kyle went home happy that day. He had a soft spot for bugs. It came from repeatedly watching episodes of Insect World, the nature documentary narrated by Sir Galen Underville. The box DVD set was a favorite birthday gift. By Friday, the other kits had been shipped back to the manufacturers. At that point, Mr. Winkle divided the class into teams.
Wait, what did you say? The other kids?
The other kits.
Oh, I thought you said kids. I'm like, oh, God.
Yep, sent them off, shipped them away.
Yep, goodbye.
Each team would have the responsibility of setting up and taking care of one of the 4 kits. Kyle was pleased that he and Devin both wound up on the ant colony team. Kara was on the butterfly farm team, which suited her just fine. Eager to see the insects, the 4 teams opened up their kits. Carefully, Devin peeled away the tape holding the ant colony box shut. He inched open the top, worried that ants would come pouring out. None did. He opened the box all the way. Where were the ants? The ant team looked over at the others. No one had any insects. Inside each box was a certificate with an internet code to have the insects delivered. So there's a picture.
And they're...
Who do you think that is?
What were their names? I don't remember their names.
Devin and Kyle.
Devin and Kyle.
Mr. Winkle helped each team place its insect order. Then the students read the directions for their kits, assembled what they could, and, of course, came up with team names. We butterfly keepers will be Team Metamorpho, said Kara. She couldn't help but tease her brother. And